For some writers like me, when a book is done, you never would want to look into it again. Because there is not a sentence, there's not a word, there's not a phrase in it that you do not want to rewrite. That is the curse of a writer, I think. You never are satisfied with what you have done, and you have a publisher like mine. The publisher adds many, many typos into it as well, which rather irks. But by the 4th edition, I think it'll be all right. So, if you buy my book, my early book from Amazon, which one of my students, I teach sometimes, because a writer cannot live on writing. So I teach sometimes, and I told one of my students that I written a book, and he said, oh yes, what is it? I said, yes, such and such, where can I find it? I said, try Amazon, which he did. And one fine day he came to me and said, no, can you sign this one? I said, oh my God, you bought it. Where? Amazon. I looked at it, it's the 1st edition. And I said, this is a collector's copy, not a reader's copy, because it's so full of typos and mistakes and errors. Then he said, it's all right, I got 2 for the price of 1. It's like a reading copy and a writer's copy, a collector's copy. So likewise, the 1st edition of A Map of Trenggalek is, I'm afraid, a collector's copy. It's got a few typos in there, which I will not point out to you. You find out for yourselves. It's customary for me when I am in a meeting like this, because I surprise myself that I am a writer. And many people are indeed very, very surprised that I do write. When I was in the Straits Times, I was a misfit because I am not temperamentally a journalist. Journalists are outgoing, loud, and hail fellow well-met kind of person, which Tom isn't, I'm sure. But I'm totally unsuited to be a reporter. A feature writer maybe, but not a reporter. So when I go out with them to all sorts of places, in the best hotels in the world, I feel very out of place. Because I'll give you one instance. In Croatia, we went to Croatia to cover the Prime Minister when he was there, and we had some free time. So I was sitting there in the lounge, minding my own business, and all these seniors of mine said, hey, let's go out and do something. I said, what? Come on, let's go. So I followed them, and of course we ended up in a peep show. And I said, no, this is not what I want. I'll just go back and not reach out. No, not that reach out. He wasn't there. But that's what journalism is all about to most journalists. and that is life, actually. They are fine and good and they're brilliant. When it comes to writing, you can be amazed at what they can do. They can sit down in the most unlikely position, in most unlikely places, write a copy, which is brilliant. Sometimes before the days of email and all this, at 2 a.m. in the morning, I was walking along Wall Street with Raman Sulaiman, looking for a place called, what was it, where you send your telex messages?
It's down in Wall Street.
Yeah, I was down in Wall Street, yeah. I was looking for a place at 2 a.m. in the morning, trying to file my copy. So that's what a writer's life is, a reporter's life is about. It wasn't me. I didn't like it at all. I like to go to bed early. And I'm not a writer at all. I take hours to write my intro. And to write an intro is very, very important. Why I mention the intro? Because that's what hangs in my head all the time. It's something you carry on, I carry it from my work. I was a reporter. Until a reporter, the first paragraph is the intro, which is the most important line in the story. We talk about inverted pyramids and all that. The first line is the intro. It's very, very important. You spend hours writing it. You erase it, you edit it, you rewrite, and so on and so forth. It hangs in my head. The first experience was at school when you were with your teacher. Your teacher says, okay, write an essay on whatever. He or she stands behind you. And as you write, she looks at it and says, no, that's wrong. And then he looks again and she looks again and says, oh, that's the wrong word you've chosen. He looks again and says, you've gone too far or too long, whatever. So when you grow up, your teacher is always in your head. So when you are on your own and you want to write something, a letter for instance, you always have a teacher behind you. You write the first sentence, you write it out because it's not good. You write another sentence, your teacher behind you says it's wrong, you rewrite. You're on the computer, you delete, you edit, you rewrite, because the teacher behind you nags it and says it's wrong. Now, the first freedom I got was when I started blogging. Blogging was a miracle. It's a godsend, it's a miracle, it's a wonderful thing. People say lots of things about blogs, but I tell you, it's a wonderful thing. Why? Because it's blogging that released me from the burdens and the chains of writing. Why? Because from blogging, I forgot about the teacher, I forgot about the intros, I was myself. Why? Because when you blog, you do not care who reads it, or if people do read it at all. If you do not like it, you can always pull it down and rewrite. Blogging releases people from a lot of burdens and baggages. And that's how I really started writing. When I started blogging, I found the freedom to write what I wanted. And then I started sitting down and I said, what do I write then? I can't go on blogging forever. No, my first blog was about politics. I blogged about world politics for about 3 years. Even before that, I had another web page. Even before the days of blogs, I had a website called Malaysia Net. And one of my writers was Rehman Rashid. And I wrote a lot of nonsense, all sorts of things that came to my head. I wrote them down. I did my own HTML coding, but when it got more complex, when Java came, I dropped. I couldn't cope with that. Anyway, blogging was the one which released me from the burdens of writing, from the shackles of writing. That's when I really discovered that you can write without having anyone nagging behind you, or without having people behind you telling you it is wrong. You just go on and write what you want. Because the real process of writing is in the second stage. The real process of writing is in the editing. I've said this before at other places, but if you listen, I want to say it again because this is very, very important, because people ask me, how do you write? How could you, a boy from Terengganu, who's deprived of all these benefits that you have in Kuala Lumpur, there are no libraries, there are no good teachers, you don't even speak proper Malay in Terengganu. How could you write? Well, my answer is you try and write, and then you are a writer. How do you become a writer? You want to know first what you want to write about. Now, I was very lucky because I was born and bred in a house, a very big house, and my family members, my uncles especially, left loads and loads of books in the house. And here again, why I'm not suited to be a journalist, because I was basically a very shy boy, still am. After school, I would run home. The house is so big, I could be in front and my mother would be in the back. They didn't know where I was right in front. And I had books to read, and I read any damn thing that came in my way. Reader's Digest, White World magazines, Thurber, James Thurber is my favorite still. Stacks of books on the shelf, which unfortunately now have all been eaten by termites. And I read and read and read, but to read intelligently is the key to becoming a writer. You must read and know what you like. You're in an art gallery, and it's a cliche in the art world. People say, I don't know much about art, but I know what I like. But it's the same in writing. You may not know how to write, you may not know how to go about it, you might not know the mechanics of it, but if you know what you want, you go for it. If you like James Thurber, read James Thurber, and then one day you might want to sit down and ask yourself, why do I like James Thurber? And then comes the analysis. Once you're in that analytical stage, you start copying. I started copying James Thurber when I was at school. James Thurber was famous for long, convoluted sentences, which were funny. He wrote long sentences, very involved, but very funny. So I tried to be him. But then there'll come a stage when you cannot be James Thurber, you cannot be Hemingway, you cannot be whoever you want to be, you have to be yourself. So that is the real writing, that's a real discovery of yourself as a writer, when you go a stage beyond and be your own man or woman. And I'm still trying to be that. I hope I will one day be successful. The story, of course, that we've heard many, many times, that my first book was written basically for my children. My 4 children are all London born and bred, and I was born in a very, very different background from them. Different kind of life, different kind of school, even, different kind of parents, different kind of facilities at home. So I thought if they do not know what this is all about, if they do not know how their parents lived, it'll be a waste. Because I think Terengganu, for what it was such a marvelous little place which made you. because there's so little in Terengganu. I would say, I think now, because there's so little in Terengganu, that it builds you up, and everything that happens to you in Terengganu is so profound that you remember them for life. Things that happen to you, even the smallest thing that's inconsequential in Kuala Lumpur, to you is important. So you remember the games you play, you remember the trees you climb, you remember the fruits you ate, you remember the words you speak, you remember the meanings of words, and you remember incidents, which is another thing. Memory is a really, really wonderful and magical thing. This is my second discovery in writing the book, and that's the art of memory. Memory is a wonderful, magical, a miraculous thing, which, as I mentioned in my introduction to a map of Terengganu, never ceases to amaze you. You never cease to wonder what kind of things will come back to you in your memory. If you sit hard enough and think about it, things will come back to you in vivid color and sound, and the images are so vivid sometimes, it scares me. I can see people, for instance, Paku, for instance, Mustafa. I had not seen him for years and years. When I came back from the first book, I met him, and then he told me who he was. And then I remember it was him. And to my surprise, I remembered one day sitting in the school canteen, in SS primary school, secondary school. And I remember the book I was reading, Schopenhauer. And then I remember Tengku Paku in his scout uniform, glasses, talking to me. And he asked me, what are you reading? And that was easily 50 years ago. And it came very vivid. I could see him, I could hear his voice. And I could see him in his horn ring glasses, black horn ring glasses, and asking me a question. And that's the man I knew 50 years ago. And Paku, I'm sorry, I can't see him. Oh yeah, he's in the back, yeah. There he is, yeah. Larger than life. So that's a wonder of memory. It's happened many, many times. People mention a name. Suddenly the person comes back to you in vivid color. Like Agnes Wee in the introduction to the book. Agnes Wee is not her real name. But I was walking in London one fine morning, and a couple came to me, a man and a woman, and said, can you show me the underground? I said, yeah, I'm going that way, just follow me. And they happened to be Malaysians. One of them was from Terengganu. And then the man said, I'm actually married to a woman called Agnes Wee, I'll call her, who was in Terengganu. And I said, was she in Sultan Selangor School? He said, yes. Was she such and such? He said, yes. I said, I know her. And I've not thought of Agnes Wee for must be easily 40 years. And when I was at school, she was very much my senior. But I could see her then, what she was like in school. And I said, I know your wife. She was such and such, and she lived in Kampuchea. And I don't know where she is now. She said, yeah, she's with me in Canada. And, but this is the recurring theme in the book, is the wonder of memory. Memory fails you sometimes, but in broad details, they are wonderful. So there you are. It's a book, it's a memoir, it's a biography of Terengganu, it's a collection of vignettes, snapshots of Terengganu, written in my own peculiar style, which irritates many people. And I had a friend the other day who told me that his daughter reads my column. And she said, my daughter was reading your column last week. He read the first paragraph, and she asked me, what the hell is he writing about? So my apologies if that's, but I'm truly grateful, because it's been a very surprising response from the public, and it's, as I keep saying, the first one is a runaway bestseller, even beyond my wildest expectations. And because of that, I wrote the book for my children. So I now regard every reader of my book as members of my family, my children. So I shall not bore you further with too many things. I'll read a passage from the book afterwards, if you insist. So thank you very, very much for coming. I'm truly grateful. I do appreciate it very much. Thank you very much.